What is up, guys? It's TimeForDillon, back at it again with another crypto video. What is up, guys? It's TimeForDillon, back at it again with another crypto video. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you're new here, subscribe, blah, 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 all that good stuff. You already know. In today's video, I'm just going to tell you guys the reason why Bitcoin was created on this day of all days, the 15-year anniversary of the collapse of Lehman Brothers, which, if you guys don't know, this is what literally created the financial crisis of 2007-2008, otherwise known as the Great Recession. The scam of fractional reserve banking coming full circle, collapsing banks, ruining people's lives, and literally almost bankrupting the entire world. If the United States government didn't step in, print $800 billion to bail out all of these corrupt institutions to take advantage of small people trusting in this banking system, the world would be back in the Stone Ages. And that's exactly what will most likely happen if it happens again. Because if this happens again, it's going to be on an even grander scale. Okay, we have huge banks. Huge banks. The top 5 largest banks in the world. We're going to look at this picture. All of which are severely over leveraged. This is the scam of the Federal Reserve. This is the scam of fractional reserve banking. So we have to talk about it because this is why in October 31st of 2008, just a month and a half after the collapse of Lehman Brothers, the Bitcoin white paper was revealed to the world, which set forth the greatest instrument of financial revolution that our world will ever see. And I hope you take part in what Bitcoin is, what cryptocurrency is, because it truly is one of the only things that can set us as a people free from the shackles of our truly slave-like financial institutions. So we're going to dive into all this in today's video. Make sure you guys stay tuned so you can understand how we got to where we are today and why this banking collapse is just getting started. So we're going to talk about it all. First things first, let's take a quick look at the crypto market so we can reminisce and see where we're at in a couple years from now when we look back on this video. We'll remember where Bitcoin was at. And if you guys aren't believers in Bitcoin, you're not going to be buying Bitcoin. Just remember the prices today so that in the future when you see how high Bitcoin truly has risen from the ashes like a phoenix, you will think back to this time and think, wow, I wish I bought it. That's what we all need. I had to see that too. In 2018, I had a chance of buying Bitcoin, buying cryptocurrencies. I watched its price rise from the ashes, just like the phoenix that it truly is. I could have bought Bitcoin for pennies on the dollar. And in March 2021, when I saw Bitcoin crash down to $3,000, I was too scared to pull the trigger and throw 10K in. And if I would have, my life would be a lot different today. But that's okay. We learned from our mistakes. We're not going to make that same mistake moving forward. And I've been DCAing, buying crypto, buying Bitcoin, buying Ethereum, buying XRP, buying Cardano, all in this bear market, waiting for the next bull market, which will come in the next 1.5 to 2.5 years. I guarantee it. Financial advice? Absolutely not. It's common sense. So anyway, this is where we're at right now, right? Still above $1 trillion market cap globally. Bitcoin still sitting above 26,000, making a push up to 27,000 after that small little dump. Of course, FTX probably going to be selling all of their crypto very soon, most of which is in Solana. But Solana seems resilient, still hovering right around $20. Not the biggest Solana fan, but there are a lot of Solana fans, and you know, community really is what controls price. However, FTX holds, I think it's north of 50% of the entire circulating supply of Solana. Luckily, most of it is locked up in long-term contracts, so it can't be sold immediately, but they're going to start selling. Expect some downward price action. Cardano, luckily, never made it onto FTX, So we'll probably still see some pullbacks when Bitcoin dips because FTX holds about $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. Even though that is not even 1% of the market cap of Bitcoin, still, it's going to cause the price to dip. When Bitcoin's price dips, the whole market seems to dip. Because that's just the way the cookie crumbles, people. Bitcoin, almost 50% of dominance in the market. Come on, people. Look at that. We have a $1 trillion market cap, 500 billion of which is Bitcoin. It controls the market. You just got to accept it. However, when we see Bitcoin rise from the ashes once again, you can expect at least a 10x in Bitcoin's price. Definitely going to make it over 100,000. Some people are speculating that it will make it over 250,000. I like to remain conservative. I'll be happy with a forex seeing it go over $100,000 because at the end of the day, Bitcoin is scarce. There's only going to be 21 million Bitcoins that will ever exist, 19.5 of which are already in circulation, 3 to 4 million of which are gone from the face of the planet altogether. Guys, how many billionaires are there out there in the world? How many millionaires are there out there in the world? There's 1,000 times the number of millionaires than there are Bitcoin to exist. That means not even every millionaire can own a Bitcoin. You know what I tell my friends all the time? Do you want to hold Bitcoin before the billionaires get it or after? Here's a tip. You want to hold it before the billionaires get it, before the millionaires get it, so that you can lock in your life-changing gains. So anyway, let's get started with the topic of today's video, right? Lehman Brothers. Everyone knows what happened in 2008. These scam artists were selling mortgage-backed securities. They were scam artists, just like every bank in the nation. The Federal Reserve came in and allowed banks to use something called fractional reserve banking, which means they only have to hold 10% of deposits on hand at any time, or whatever the reserve ratio is at the time. It's usually around 10%. So these banks only have to hold 10% of deposits at a time. 90% of the deposits, what do? Lend it out or invest it. And guess what? These people were investing your hard-earned dollars that you expected to be held safe in these banks. They were investing it in sketchy scam assets. What happened? People understood what was going on when it's basically a Ponzi scheme. They take your money, they pay off earlier investors. What happened with Lehman Brothers? Well, it all came crumbling down. And what did it do? It exposed the entire fraudulent system. Almost caused the entire world to collapse. But like I said, the US government stepped in, printed $800 billion to bail out these banks. Disgusting. Why do you think we have inflation? It's because we keep printing money. And over the last 2 years, how much money did we print? Trillions. Trillions of dollars. And then people wonder why gas is so expensive. Yes, supply chain. More importantly, we keep printing money. Why do you think we have BRICS Nation coming out? They're sick of the disgusting weaponization of the US dollar. It needs to stop. But it won't ever stop. And that is why we had very smart individuals. Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever this man is, or whatever group this group is, nobody knows, decided that enough was enough. And they came out with Bitcoin, the white paper. They introduced this peer-to-peer decentralized financial system to the world. And what did it do? It allowed for no single entity, no single government to control the supply of money. Instead, the supply of money was going to be dictated by code. Hard code that can't be changed unless 90% of all the miners or validators on the decentralized network come together and agree to increase supply, which won't ever happen. And if it does happen, 90% of the people agreeing to do something, I'd say that's the definition of democracy. Something that this government does not care about and is not. It's not a democracy. And the Federal Reserve, which is an entity not controlled by the people, elites that aren't even elected by us. They aren't voted into power. They are appointed into power. These people control the supply of our money, and it needs to stop. It's disgusting. That's why Bitcoin was created, because we knew this can't keep happening. This is a direct result of Lehman Brothers collapsing. Bitcoin was written into existence on October 31st, 2008, and on January 3rd, 2009, the first block, the Genesis block, was mined by Satoshi himself or whoever it is that created this system. The first X number of blocks were mined, which resulted in the first million Bitcoins being rewarded to Satoshi Nakamoto, which since those days have not moved. They have not been spent. They have not been validated. They have been sitting dormant in a wallet ever since. Some people speculate that this person died. Some people speculate that they are waiting for the right time. Either way, it's only less than 5% of the entire circulating supply of Bitcoin. So even if these people do decide to eventually sell their million Bitcoin, it's not enough to crash the market. So just keep that in mind. Even if they did sell and crash the market by a factor of 1/20th, guess what? There's people like me that believe so much in the power of asymmetric and symmetric encryption, bolstered by decentralization, that we will just scoop up Bitcoin at tremendously lower prices than where it's sitting now. People believe in the power of the decentralized peer-to-peer network, regardless of what the price is. Understand that, and you understand why Bitcoin is prevalent and still worth, to this day, $26,000 for one Bitcoin. Understand that, and you understand why Bitcoin is prevalent and will remain prevalent for the history of life. As long as there is electricity and one node still operating on the network, Bitcoin will remain secure. And there's satellites going around our Earth that validate transactions. So even if we experience an electromagnetic pulse that wipes out the entire electric grid on the entire planet, there will still remain one satellite flying around the sky, being powered by solar energy that will continue to validate transactions until we're able to get our grid back up. Resilient, uncrackable, unhackable. It's the strongest form of money our people have ever known. So since the collapse of Lehman Brothers, we have seen numerous banks fail. Just this year alone, we have seen 3 banks fail, and all of which are a result of what? Raising interest rates, which we're going to have another meeting in 4 days and 18 hours that will probably result in another rate hike. Even though CME, the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, they have this awesome thing called the Fed Watch. They're saying there's a 99% chance that there will be no raise of rates. I still think we're going to have a raise of rate. Even if it's not this upcoming Wednesday, we're probably going to have another rate hike coming soon, because you can't expect to print $3.2 trillion and expect it not to affect our monetary spending power. It's just absolutely insane. And that is why from the beginning of our pandemic, after all this money was printed, we have seen rates go up to 5.5%, the highest rate increase in the history of rate increases. Yes, we've seen higher rates than 5.5%, but we've never seen such a dramatic increase from near zero rates, 0% rates, up to 5.5% rates in such a short period of time. And you expect it to continue going up. And that's because the only tool that the Federal Reserve has in its back pocket to control inflation is to increase rates, to make it so that people stop spending money. Because that's the only way to get prices under control. But it's never going to happen because we keep printing money. We keep printing money. We keep sending it off to Ukraine for a war that has no effect on us whatsoever. To fatten the pockets of rich, corrupt politicians in the United States, and to continue to fund the military-industrial complex in our country. It's disgusting. It needs to stop. It needs to end. And the only answer is Bitcoin. But I just want to quickly tell you the reason why these banks failed. You guys know it. So do I. It's because of the raise of rates. from 2008, as a result of these banks collapsing, to stimulate the economy, we printed money. We injected it into the pockets of all people around our country. And we lowered rates to near 0%, which was supposed to be an emergency measure that only lasted half a year. But of course, corrupt politicians took advantage of this. And what did they do? They extended it for nearly 14 years, up literally until the pandemic. During the pandemic, the same rates were in place, near 0% rates. And these greedy banks, the ones that collapsed, Signature, First Republic, Silicon Valley, and even Silvergate, all took advantage of this, and so did all the other banks in our world. They all took advantage of this, and what did they do? They kept buying bonds from the US government, even though they were close to 0%, locked in those rates. It was supposed to be the safest form of returns imaginable. But what happened? You guys know what happened. We raised rates. So what happened to these banks that were holding billions of dollars? They had to sell their bonds at a loss. Silicon Valley Bank, which had $200 billion in customer deposits, only held $17 billion in cash, less than 10% of deposits in cash. And they held $91 billion in bonds, over leveraged. That's what we call that. So $91 billion in bonds, which were not matured, which means, guess what? They made no gains. Which means what? When it came time to sell these bonds that were at close to 0% interest rate, why would someone buy these bonds when they can go right to the US government and buy them at 5.5%? That's called stupid. And that's why Silicon Valley Bank was forced to sell almost all of these bonds at a loss. This is what created the hole with Silicon Valley Bank. And that's why Silicon Valley Bank, $209 billion, went under. The third largest bank failure in the history of the United States of America. Who else? Well, we had Silvergate. Same exact situation. Some people say 11.9 billion. I've seen other estimates of $13 billion of assets under management, which means deposits in their bank. How much did they hold? $11.4 billion of securities. 90% of the money that they held on hand was in securities. Bonds, mortgage-backed securities. Scam. So what happens when it came time to sell these bonds at a loss? They acquired these bonds at near 0% interest rates. So when it came time to sell these bonds, what happened? They lost money. And when people went to pull the money out of the bank, they saw just how insolvent this bank truly was. It's the same exact thing for Signature Bank. $110 billion. $110 billion in assets. They luckily only held 2.5 billion plus 760 million, which is about 3.3 billion dollars in bonds, 4 billion in cash. $4 billion in cash of a bank that's worth 110 billion. Why are they only holding $4 billion in cash? The rest of which was lent out? Where else would it be? Lent out. So just a mere $3.3 billion was enough to seal the deal for Signature Bank and put them under. It's disgusting that this is allowed. And yet here we are, September 15th, 2023, 15 years after the collapse of Lehman Brothers, for the exact same thing. And we have the top 5 largest banks in the United States, all over leveraged. Tell me how this makes any sense, people. How does this make any sense? This entire system is disgusting. It's a scam, it's a sham, and it's crumbling before our very eyes. The bottom line is this: it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. It might not happen this year, might not happen next year, might not even happen in a decade, but it is going to crumble, and it's going to crash and burn, and we will be the collateral damage. Because yes, the United States government can continue to print US dollars ad nauseum, but the rest of the world is not going to continue to put up with it, and that's why we've seen the invention of BRICS nations, gold-backed dollars. It's just a matter of when, not a matter of if. Look at this, guys. Wells Fargo, 9.48 times over leveraged, 9.5 times over leveraged. Total derivatives, $15 billion. Total assets, $1.6 billion. So they are almost 10 times over leveraged in derivatives than assets on hand. Bank of America, same thing, 9.5. They have $23 billion in derivatives, which means what? Bonds. Which means what? Property that they hold. Which means what? Investments in the stock market. They only hold $2.4 billion. That's it. 9.5 over leveraged. Citibank, disgusting. Disgusting. They only have $1.7 billion on hand. $54 billion of derivatives. 32 times over leveraged. And the most disgusting, Goldman Sachs, which tends to push out all of the regulators that end up in our United States government that control our entire financial sector. Kind of strange. Why are they 110 times over leveraged? $57 billion. They only hold $500 million. Make that make sense, please. JP Morgan, same situation. 17.4 times over leveraged. They are one of the biggest banks on the planet. 57, almost $58 billion of assets under management. They only hold 3. Make that make sense. It is simply a matter of time before this whole system collapses, before the whole gig is up, before we look behind the curtain and we see Oz sitting there laughing at us. So just get ready, people. That is why I continue to hold Bitcoin. When we see the historic rise in Bitcoin's price this next cycle, with the Bitcoin halving how many days away? 170 days away. We will see the next Bitcoin halving. Approximately 1 year after this, we will see the next all-time high with Bitcoin. That is why we need to all buy and hold Bitcoin. It's simply a matter of time. And you already know, when Bitcoin rips to the upside, all of these coins are going to rip to the upside as well. So get ready. You heard it here first. I hope you guys have a beautiful day, beautiful night, wherever you guys are. Dylan is out.